Wonderful.
Welcome everybody. This is Face the Conclave. We've got a few guests here. We're going to be talking about map voting and land selection. If you are or have been in tune with the dev journals, the blogs coming out from Soulbound Studios, it sounds like coming soon. They are going to be moving into the map voting sections of our game. And as we transition from map voting, inevitably down the line, we come into land selection. So we just wanted to grab a group of people together and discuss, what's up with the map voting, and then what we're preparing to do, what communities can be involved in terms of land selection, and maybe a little bit of speculation about the mechanisms behind the land selection, what that may look like based on what we saw in things like surname selection and with the details that they have released to the public. Without further ado, our guest stars, and there's a few of them this time, is Balrog, Insight, Black Bob, Wes, and Utogi. If you guys want to sound off in name, we'll make this all dictatorial-like.
Yeah, this is Insight.
Hey, I'm
That's all I have to
Utogi.
say. Okay.
Just talk over insights, no problem there.
Yeah, it's good.
This is Balrog.
Black Bob here.
What's up, everybody? It's Wes.
Yeah, so we've got this group of people together. We before this stream started, we were discussing, hey, this is what we expect. This is what we think we're going to be seeing coming up in VAT voting, map voting, and land selection. And with that, without further ado, we're gonna jump right into it. So let's start out with a quick outline of map voting. What's map voting, you say? Utogi, you're our high elder of knowledge here. You've been in line with, or listening to the releases with the Soulbound Studios community. I've got a quote up, and we've been waiting for this map selection. They're planning, and correct me if I'm wrong, to release a number of maps for the community to vote on. Basically say, hey, these are things I like, these are things I don't like, really involve the gaming community in the decision on what continent, what the form of the game world is going to look like. Am I getting it on the head there?
Definitely. And I could go over some of the more important points of map voting and how it relates to the game overall.
Yeah, no, feel free. And everybody else, if there's something that we're missing here, do jump in.
All right. So something very interesting about map voting is people may be wondering, if they haven't gotten into terrain generation very much before, is thinking, okay, well, we're going to pick from all these maps. Why would they spend all this time generating these different maps when they could have just made one and won with it, right? But because of how they're creating the terrain and it's all procedural, you can actually create many variations of it very easily. And so that allows us as a community to pick the ones that we like best rather than the developers just dictating it to us. And so I think that's a really awesome aspect of the events coming up here.
Yeah. And I mean, we're gonna think as a community. There's different things that we want. I know that Blob here, you've been working and talking a lot about ocean, naval kind of things. Insight, you're my main man there. Insight, commerce and trade routes. Barog, your roads. Like we each have these different perspectives on what the map could look like, what we want out of it. Balrog, is there anything that you can think about when you look at the maps that will be released? And I'm going to throw up a image here of some of the demos. These are not the actual maps, but some of the demos that they have in terms of the maps that we could choose from. What are you looking for in terms of the civil engineering environment? Building roads, bridges, structures when it comes to map voting here.
When it comes to map voting, my job gets pretty simple. It all turns into everybody else's job. So when we're going to start laying down roads, we're going to obviously want to connect point A to point B the most efficiently, but determining what point A and point B is and how wide of a road do we need really comes down to the other departments. So I get the opportunity to work with Black Bob, who's our head of our military department, and go, hey, man, how many people are we expecting to move? Like, if we have to move siege equipment, how wide do we need the road to be? Do I need a specific weight capacity on bridges? Things like that. And then I get to turn around to Insight and go, hey, if we're going to have a trade hub, where would we want the trade hub? How many carriages do we expect per day to go down this road? I mean, are we expecting multiple wide kind of caravans, like
Yep.
what kind of things like that. So then all of that shapes how the roads are selected, and then it kind of goes back before our council and goes, hey, where's everybody going to pick? And then trying to bridge the gaps with all of that as a consideration.
Yeah, and so I think that leads in really nice here with insight. You mentioned insight and trade and stuff like that. We talk rivers, we talk roads, we talk resources. What are the things you look at map selection and you're really picking up on in terms of the trade network, the commerce side of Chronicles of Elyria when we look at different maps?
Yeah, absolutely, Asbestos. It's really interesting how much you can get out of a map just looking at, no political features, just the geography. And you can say, well, okay, if I were soulbound, it looks like there's going to be a kingdom here. It looks like there's going to be a kingdom here. And you can start to kind of place geopolitical borders on the map itself. And then from there, you can start to place duchy borders down. Once you have a duchy border down, you can start to say things like, well, it looks like these land masses are going to have these resources, and these parts of the continent will have these resources. And then you start to say, well, if I was living in this like general part of the map, and someone else was living in this general part of the map, and I wanted to get my, I don't know, my wood to this guy's iron or whatever, how would I do it? And you say, well, you'd have to kind of go this way. There's a river here. Maybe you take a barge down the river, or maybe you'd walk around these mountains here. And as you start to say these things, you start to look at the world and you start to think, well, maybe there's going to be a trade route that emerges along these areas. And then once you have the trade route figured out, you say, well, boy, there's like 4 trade routes that connect right here. Well, maybe a trade hub's going to be there. So, my job in this whole thing is to say, well, it looks to me, and, obviously I'm making guesses. It looks to me like we're going to see high population zones, high commercial zones in these particular areas that we can call trade hubs, that we can call production hubs, whatever. And then kind of shape the entire duchy around the way we think commerce is going to flow within it, which is, an advantage that a lot of nation builders in human history may not have had.
Yeah, intelligent design, that sort of thing. Now, Wes, we've got you here. You're you're not part of our elder council, but you give us a unique perspective as a player, as a person, as a contributor to the community. How much do you think about when we talk about map selection, when we talk about map voting here? Are there things that you're picking up on that we're not necessarily considering? Like Insight was talking about, that's very trade focused. Utogi's Elder of Knowledge, and we're looking at the larger pictures. How about for the individual player? Is there what's going through your mind as we talk about map voting?
Well, as business, one thing that I definitely have noticed as far as my attendance in various meetings and listening to people's conversations on the topic, it seems like those at the higher level, particularly here in the county, have definitely paid a lot of mind to what individual pursuits and concerns people are going to have once the game is at launch. So people like me who are interested in very specific trade crafts, for instance, I'm really, really pushing hard for the contract system and to see how that develops. And I'm also going to be co-running a school within the county as well. So a lot of what I'm going to be doing is dependent upon the choices of the county leads, duchy leads, like people who are basically going to dictate what sort of resources and territory I have to work with. So I will say, so far, as a player, my experience has been very positive on that front. They've been extremely receptive to feedback from the members of their respective counties. And I think we have a lot of good things to look forward to, personally.
I'm glad you bring that up because that really speaks to the power the individual players have. While you may not necessarily be involved in pushing the button that chooses one map or another, it is through communication to your leaders, the people who are pushing those buttons, by being involved, like Wes said, that you let them know, hey, Wes, you really want this specific industry. I don't remember what your industry was.
Mostly writing stuff. So it's going to be pretty closely tied to woodworking, and obviously, like I said, we're going to be founding a school to pursue research on that front. So for me in particular, since that school is going to be located in the capital city, I have to be able to trust that my account is going to put us in an advantageous spot with our city.
Gotcha, yeah. But yeah, no, it's the communication, letting your leaders know that so they can choose something that's acceptable to you. We always we've talked previously on these casts about the county of Iskar, the dwarven county, and they want to be dwarves, and we want to fulfill their desire. So when we get to things like map selection and getting to make those choices, making sure that the communication is there is very important. Now, Utogi, I don't remember. It's not just leaders who vote on map selection; it's the whole community, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe it's based around actually influence, and so your influence, well, directly actually relates to how much influence you have on map selection.
Okay. But everybody does have a vote. Everybody does have, albeit bigger or smaller, the ability to say, I like this one. You should choose this one.
You can certainly discuss it, yes. But then
Yeah,
when it comes to the actual voting, I think there is a minimum threshold for influence, though I don't remember exactly what it is at the moment.
Gotcha. So, be involved, as a community.
Weren't they going by how many souls you have?
yeah, I think so.
Your soul splits up the ways you can. So how many souls you have, or rather sparks of life, determines how you can split up your influence. For example, if you have 2 sparks of life or 2 souls, I can't remember sparks of life or souls. You say you have 10,000 influence, right? If you have 2 of them, you could say, well, I'm going to put 5,000 influence on this map, 5,000 influence on that map, and then you can distribute it that way. If you only had 1, then you couldn't split it up that way. If you had 9, you could split it up 9 different ways, right? And so what that does is it doesn't increase your voting power, it just allows you to distribute it differently.
Interesting. Yeah, no, and so we've got, a mechanic that they've already discussed about how to get your vote be heard, for those of us who are able to or who participate. But we're going to take all that information, all that the details about the votes that are counted and whatnot, and that's going to be turned into a actual selection process for Soulbound Studios. I mean, I'm relying heavily on the images that they have created for the design journals, but it might look something, let's say, like this. You'll have a graph with different voting preferences for different maps, and are they going to do something a little more ranked? Do you know? Are we voting on 3 and then going down to 3 more? Are we going straight to the one selection? They're just gonna, Did you remember what the mechanism looks like just for the map voting? Do we go from 10 to 5 to 1 to 10 to 1?
I believe it's 20 initially that gets narrowed down to 5, and then it's finalized from there. So 10 to 5 1.
10 to 5 to 1. So
or 20 to 5 to 1. I'm sorry, 25 1.
25-1.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and I think that's going to be fantastic. We're going to see people voting for things that they want, and us getting down to a selection. Now, a lot of people in the community, I know we've talked about this, Blob and Insight, and a lot of people in the community are a little hesitant to commit to one thing or another without solid things in front of them. They want to see a map before they say, I want to be right here, or no declaration without information kind of thinking. So let's imagine we go down through the map voting selection and we reach, let's say we reach a single example here. I'm going to just toss this one up. This has got some kingdom lines, some county lines on it, or sorry, biome lines is what they have on this. But we're going to come down to the end, the voting map selection, and we'll have a single map with which the server is going to participate in. What happens next? What actions can communities take really at that step to be inclusive, to be aggressive, to work and drive excitement inside those communities?
Well, this is where the fun starts, right? Because now you got a map. So the question is, can you predict where people are going to go, and can you predict where your enemies are going to go, and can you predict what your community is going to do with that map? And if you can get a real big leg up on the people around you. So I think that the very moment we have anything, even the moment we see a clear leader, we see it clear, like, well, this one's going to win. Instantly, we're going to see people drawing kingdom and duchy borders. We're going to see people drawing roads, and we're going to get predictions of what this map is going to look like into the future.
Now do we feel so when we talk about people are going to draw roads in Insight Balrog, is that going to be valuable information? How do communities really benefit from these things, and are these things that we see at home and hear about abroad?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hypothetical, right? So it's valuable in the sense that I would imagine a well-informed person with good common sense could get most of it right. Could say, well, if you look at the map 6 months from now, it'll probably, roads will start to look like this, major population centers will look like this, but who knows, right? I mean, we don't know how this game is going to play out, or if anyone's going to play it, how all of that's going to work out. It's valuable in the sense that it gives you a baseline, kind of an expectation, but it's also probabilistic. So, if you imagine that you've got a county with like tons and tons of IP, maybe that county, is willing to build its own roads, and the duchy's willing to say, well, you'd save us so much money if we just went through your county, so we'll just do that. It sets the road off a little bit, and the count that didn't get the road through their county is going to be a little bit peeved by that. You'll have those kinds of things, but on the whole, at the whole duchy level, you'd expect to get most of it right.
Plus, I think a lot of what we're going to see happen is that everybody has these grand plans, and as the game starts developing and people start trying things, they're going to realize that what they thought they were into and like isn't really what they're into and like. So
Right.
somebody who might start out wanting to go mining might turn around and go, I really don't like the mining aspect, but I like shaping the ore, and it's going to wind up as a blacksmith. So now we're going to see that the road is not necessarily going to go through this big mining town, but in fact might go to his neighbor, and that the mining town will feed into the neighbor. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of happen, is that as dynamically people get into it and start doing exploration of professions and their professions and the economies of the town shape up, that really dictates it. And if you look at using the United States as an example, most of our interstate system and roads is not just randomly placed. It goes from major population centers and major production centers to other ones. And that's kind of the guiding principle, I think, that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
You brought up an interesting point there. There's going to be so map selection is going to change things. We've got a set of expectations as a community, through and through, that it is going to be this way. Iskar wants to be in the mountains. Blob, other individuals have ideas about the environment that they want to be playing in. Wes, I want to jump to you really quick. Because there's going to be this shift of what the expectations are. What's feasible in terms of your expectations after we do map selection and inevitably domain and domain selection. What are the things that the common player, that you yourself are thinking about, in order to be flexible and get what you really want out of the game?
Well, I think it comes down to a willingness to explore different play styles. If your duchy or county happens to wind up in a location other than the sort of place that you had initially envisioned, there are still going to be tons of different opportunities and resources available for any player to look at and say, okay, so maybe this isn't exactly how I planned it, but what about all of these other things that I wanted to do? Because, I mean, if you talk to the average player of any MMO, let alone someone playing Chronicles of Elyria, they're probably going to have at least 5 or 6 different things that they're going to say, hey, this is a really cool idea, I want to do that. Or, hey, this is a great type of character that I would love to play. So I don't think it's necessarily going to lock out too many people. And I think concerns for flexibility are okay and kind of already built into the way that the system is designed at this point. So I don't think we're going to see too many people disappointed. And I personally already have plans for at least like 3 different characters pursuing different trade crafts or skill sets. So I would personally be fine with just about anything. And I think there are a lot of players who mirror that sensibility in some respect.
I think Wes brought up a really good point, that we have a lot of people who want to do a lot of things, and the biggest challenge we're going to have in a persistent world is kind of future proofing ourselves. So if we know that we're going to have a shipping lane coming down a river and we're going to get big ships down this river, we can't just let anybody build a small bridge over this river and block the river then. And that, I think, is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we are going to face.
Interesting. So I want to use what Wes was talking about there, the flexibility of the community and the players, as kind of the springboard to discuss some things about Soulbound Studios and what they have talked about in terms of maintaining community groups. So they were completely blown away, as far as I understand, and please correct me if your understanding's slightly different, but they were completely blown away with this creation of communities before the evidence of a actual game. It's a wonderful thing to have as a game designer to say there's people passionate. We're going to have people who want to buy, who want to play, who want to participate in a game. But I don't know if they were initially prepared for that, for people to create these large communities like the different kingdoms, the different duchies. Does Soulbound really have a responsibility, and what have they talked about in terms of their responsibility to maintain those community groups when we get inevitably from map voting into domain selection? Are we going to have estranged families? Are there going to be are there going to be communities that are more or less broken apart until they can fight their way back together? What do we expect?
Well, I think the only obligation Soulbound has is to create conflict. And, whether they do that by pitting established communities against each other or whether they do it by breaking those communities up, it's kind of up to them. But I think what Caspian really wants to see, and this is good because Caspian's a storyteller and this is a game about a story. What we really want to see is conflict, is goals that are at odds with one another. And I feel very confident that that's exactly what's going to happen.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that kind of the nature of the narrative here is the fact that not everyone is going to be able to get everything that they want right away. We're all going to have to work very, very hard to make sure that the game turns out the way that we, the community, would like it to. So introducing those conflicts early on and giving us some obstacles to overcome, I think, would be more strengthening to the community than it would be more divisive, because even if groups of people find themselves separated, they are going to find ways to bring themselves back together. You cannot ever underestimate the determination of a game community like this.
I mean, I'm going to take an opposite standpoint on this one. I really think that they do, to some extent, have an obligation to help these groups stay together. And I'm not saying that obligation has to extend to such a degree that everybody who's part of the Conclave can pick together and everybody who's part of Board and Wall can pick together, but to keep some of this framework together that they've established over time. And yeah,
I don't see that being difficult. I think that there's so much land on this map that everyone, worst case scenario, can say screw you guys, I'm going my own way, and can find a place they want to be. But just like Wes said, what's going to be very difficult is everyone getting everything they want. I really don't think that's going to happen, including ourselves.
So I'm glad you brought up community, because in the context of discussing this map thing, and I think that both what Insight and Balrog said is correct, right? And so I think that the communities here, so to me there's two anchors of what this makes this game special right now. And the two anchors are the kingdom construct, right? So kingdom, duchies, counties, mayors, people, that construct with the communities that we're allowed to build here is part of what's anchoring this game. The other thing that really anchors this game is the map and domain selection to me, right? So those two things together pretty much anchor the start of COE. And, I think that the game does need to create conflict through story. And I think that if the game is successful, all the rest of the people that aren't here right now are going to be more than happy to create all that conflict for the story to develop in the game.
That's
But
right.
the people that are here right now, I think there's more than enough space for everybody to maintain their communities. And I think COE and SBS has actually gone out of their way to help make sure that these communities stay together. But, with that said, having, if I was building a skyscraper in New York City, right, the foundation to me would be the map and the domain selection. And all of the structure and all the structure and the framing and everything else is the communities in the kingdom structure, right? And then when you put all that together, you have a building. It's a big ass empty building, and that's where all the rest of this stuff comes in, where people can start to do what they want with it, right? Now, the difference between this, what makes COE special than other games is that other games you come in and the building and the foundation are already there. And you operate more off of what you need to do more than what you want to do, right? So almost every other game is based on so take that from an MMORPG all the way to a survivor game like Rust or something like that, right? So Rust, yeah, you spawn in and there's a map, but you don't really get to set what's on the map, where you're going, and all that kind of stuff. You kind of you find a place, and you start to take things into account. Where are trees? Where are rocks? Where are the rad towns? You know, what do I need to be successful here so I don't get raided in day one, right? You start to work on necessity and less want, right? So with COE being able to put maps up that are available for people to vote on, you're basically selecting what is the foundation that I want my building to be built on, right? And then from there, right, with you being able to select which kingdom, which duchy, which county, which city you want to be a part of, you're basically saying, what do I want the framing of my building to look like, right? And then you get to operate based off of, because you have complete total choice in this, you get to operate based on what do I want to do in this game versus what do I need to do in this game. So not only am I getting to use this as my playground, but I'm getting to say what type of playground I want to play on.
Yeah. Yeah, good shit.
Definitely
I'd like to
good points
build on
there.
that point a little bit and say that it's entirely possible for players to carve out the kind of niche that they want to occupy. And I might be diving too deeply into this. I don't exactly know how these systems are going to play out by the time release comes out. But it seems very likely that, say, you need access to a particular kind of resource, like in my case, it could be a special kind of plant that makes really versatile inks for use in contracts. And it might not be present initially in the biome. Who's to say that I can't go and introduce it into the biome? Because it seems that they're placing a lot of attention to detail on how these biomes interact with each other and the resources that you have available shifting and becoming either more or less prevalent as time goes on. And it seems like that's something that people need to remember, is they can more or less make the environment into what they want it to be, even if it's not advantageous right at the start.
Plague lands.
No, thank you.
Let's not.
No, and I think that's a good point. You know, it's a massively evolving online world. You know, the meow, as they call it, and you're able to change things. You're able to create and to modify. You know, people, things, places. Now, I want to bring a tangent slightly to the responsibility to maintain community groups. So individuals who are listening, whether now or in the future, you know, we're an established community inside the world of Elyria. What if at the start of the game, there's a community that comes in that wasn't involved in any of this? You know, this is more or less your standard Guild Wars to WoW. They didn't hear about it. Maybe they were too young. Maybe they were not knowing. Does this map selection enrich the lives of people who are going to be coming in after launch? What do we think about that? Does that change the dynamic for those communities?
I think we greatly overestimate the danger of people coming into our settlements after launch. I think that humans by nature are social people. And while yes, you will definitely get trolls, I don't think the majority of them will be that way. So I think it's a great opportunity for communities that already exist to expand and to bring new people into their community. But I also think to a lesser extent, it will be a very big problem for communities not ready to deal with PvP.
And I think some of that will be more than you know, the classic griefing that's in other games. I think it's more so going to be, okay, Black Bob's account, and he's account that's been here because he bought accounting back in the day when he could buy them in pre-launch of the game. But I'm here now, and I want to be account because that's what I want to do in game. But the only way that I'm going to be account now that I'm here after launch is one of these guys got to go, right? So I'm going to have to figure out how my group is going to take down Black Bob's group so I can be the new count of his county, right? And to me, like, I think I welcome that in the game, because to me that creates what's going to be fun in this game for me. And I know some people are really hesitant to have to deal with that, but I mean, I don't want to come in here and just play a game where I RP his account for 10 years and that's it. Like, I don't find the fun in that. I find the fun in that of dealing with these kind of conflicts that are going to happen.
Well, building on Bob too, right? How many of us picked up account package or became a duke or a mayor and didn't really realize, expecting to do like SimCity, and didn't realize that instead of playing SimCity, you're going to be playing Chief
Elyria
Justice of the
politics,
land.
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob, what you said works both ways, right? I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to be account forever who very much are not going to get their wish or more than about 28 days. And there's also going to be people that get into the count job and realize, oh my God, I have to make decisions. This sucks. So Bob, maybe there'll be less conflict there than you think.
True. I mean, I can make the argument that I would be happier being a deviant PvP or somewhere than I would be being a count, right? Like, I mean, I could see having fun gameplay in that just as much as I see having fun gameplay in leading a group in a county.
Right.
So let me pull back here and take a swing at what I think the spirit of the question that Aspizis was asking is to me. And it's the fact that land selection will absolutely have a major impact on people who join the game later on, whether it's a few weeks, months, years after. It's going to immeasurably impact their gameplay experience, because they're going to come into this game maybe not knowing exactly what it's about and what you can do, and they're going to see how much has changed from when the game was first released, and all of the things that people have done within it. And they're going to be like, oh my God, holy shit, look at all of this stuff. It's this history that we are going to be creating and laying down for all of the other people who are going to come afterward. And I think it's going to be a more uplifting experience for them, because they're going to realize just how much freedom they have to act upon the world itself and the other people within it. And they can achieve just as much as we did within our first few years in the game.
And I think that's an extremely important point that Wes makes, in that they're developing a history, like a meta history for the players at this point that later players will be able to experience as they come in the game, right? In most games, you have just a launch stage. Okay, you play the game. Maybe they implemented some kind of lore or background for the characters in the game, but everyone's essentially starting at the same time or with the same story, right? But then in Chronicles of Elyria, you'll have people joining, and there'll already be this rich history of both what has happened in the world, like in the actual game world, and as well as what's happened out of the game world and how the players have interacted and what kind of communities have formed, right? And so that, I think, really enriches the experience for players who join after the fact.
Plus, it makes it fun for those of us who want to be the crotchety old farts who were like, well, back in my day, we didn't have these fancy
Exactly.
ships of the line or star charts or whatever you newfangled gadgets these kids these days are using.
I love that imagery, that old man.
That, and I think we're doing something that hasn't been done before, right? Like, people hold EVE Online as one of the crowning jewels of player kind of created content, but at the end of the day, I can't make a new Stargate connection. I can't shape the way the world is run. In this game, that we're making the roads, we're actually picking our map, right? So their map will always be their map. You can't change it, you can't make a new one, you can't do anything about it. But for us, we get a new one. But then what we get is only a small portion of our game world. So down the line, we're going to be able to discover new places that we didn't really get to vote on, but we picked this first one. And how we picked this first one shapes what we wind up doing. And we're going to be able to look at our server compared to 4 other servers or 3 other servers and see how we progressed versus how they progressed, and who beat who to boats or who beat who to gunpowder or things like that based upon maps.
Yeah, I think that's an important point right there. It's like we've mentioned earlier. It's telling a story, and you've got 4 iterations of developing worlds that get to develop differently based on the maps they choose and the communities involved and all that other stuff. And it really gets back to I believe Blob mentioned it. I believe Insight mentioned it. That desire by Soulbound Studios to create a medium in which you can tell stories and you can create a history. Like, I think it was you, Wes, talking about, hey, holy shit, look at what these people have done. Look what they have created. Look what they have established here. And when we brought up Eve in there too, and I think this is going to be slightly different than Eve. Eve has a good few hours of learning. There's a few of you here who've played Eve, and figuring out how you fit into a world like Eve is difficult. That being said,
To say the least.
to say the least, this is difficult. I think the Chronicles of Elyria is a game, even with the map selection, occurring at the beginning and people who come in after launch not having that opportunity, they're still going to have the options, the ability to jump in and say, "This is my spot, this is my place, this is my story." Anyway, I want to transition us to a little bit of speculation, I guess. So we've got a map. This is not the map. This is a map. This is an example that they released inside their design journal, and I want to pretend for a second that this was the map. After map voting, and we've said this before, we're going to go into domain selection. Big, bold letters, ominous music in the background. I'm thinking probably something similar to the Mines of Moria in Lord of the Rings soundtrack. Domain selection. What is that going to look like? I mean, this is pure speculation at this point. At some point after voting, we're going to get into domain selection. But I want to give us an opportunity to what could this look like? What are the mechanisms by which domain selection?
Oh, let me take this one. Yeah, Asbestos, totally get what you're saying, and I'm really excited about it. What Soulbound is marketing this as is it's a chance for everyone who paid to study the map and decide where their county is going to go, and maybe they'll create conflict, maybe it'll resolve conflict, and we'll have a lot of surprises in domain selection and all these things. The reality, I think, will be much different. I think this will be a highly choreographed, highly well-known thing to the point that when it's time for a certain group of individuals to pick, there will be few, if any, surprises. We will come out of that going, we'll be able to say, okay, we think these duchies are going here, and we'll come out saying, oh yeah, we were wrong about these two, but the rest of it, exactly what we expected. And I'm very much looking forward to the time between map selection and domain selection, when all of that math and all that stuff is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Insight's totally spot on with this one. As much as we want to say it's going to be unpredictable where a bunch of people go, most of the community that's been pretty active, especially through the Plague event, has declared their intentions to one kingdom or one duchy or another. So we can pretty well predict which duchy is going to pick which kingdom, which counts are going to pick with which duchy, and things should fall generally into place. The big wild card will be how many people are going to come into this land selection that bought a package and then just never came back because there was no game to play.
Well,
so
so go ahead, Bob.
If you bought this game, right, because this appealed to you, right? The COE appealed to you. Is there a bigger milestone in the pregame than the actual domain selection? Like, is there a bigger milestone if you are a early backer and you have a settlement? Is there a bigger milestone than domain selection?
Absolutely not.
Nope.
So I find it. This is where I agree with Insight, is that most of this is going to be highly choreographed and figured out and the math done and stuff in between map selection and domain selection with most of the communities. But man, if people aren't active in figuring that out, then I think that they just missed the boat with this game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's going to be very interesting to me is, so okay, I'm a guy. I've got 3 counties, and I've merged 2 of them, and I have 1 other county, and maybe no one knows that. Everyone knows that I'm a count in Boardweall, but I've got this other county that I haven't told anyone about, or maybe I've only told my king about, and I can put that thing anywhere I want. And that, to me, will be the fun of domain selection. Figuring out who's going to deliberately place things to screw with their enemies.
Interesting. I want to leave that silence to hang there for a second, because what you described right there is, like you said, that is going to be exciting. That is going to be game changing, depending on how Soulbound implements its mechanics. And I realize I cut you off there. I want to give you a chance to bring up what you were going to say. But once you're finished, I think we're going to circle back to those mechanics and what they might look like.
Balrog, was that you?
Yeah, no, he got me.
Okay.
Yeah, shot through the heart. It's all right. I'm to blame.
Great minds think alike.
Yep. So we've seen something similar to domain selection in the past. I mean, it's not the same, but similar enough. And what I'm referring to here is the surname selection. I mean, you take domain selection, you break it down into its basic form and say, hey, what does this mean? That is more or less surname selection, as I understand it. You know, people pick based off of IP value and choose something they want. Is there any confusion there? Do you think I'm hitting the nail on the head there?
Well, I think they'll probably develop a different system for it. But yeah, I mean, we've seen how Soulbound has done something similar to this before, certainly.
So, given that what we've seen with surname selection and the IP management and what we know is more or less going to have to happen in domain selection, whenever that may be, how could that look good? Like, what should this look like? What are the things that Soulbound really needs to be considering when they talk about we're going to be doing domain selection?
Well, the first thing they got to consider, and I'm going to speak up real quick here because I want to frame this whole discussion, is efficiency. We could do domain selection for the next 8 months. And I think if I'm Soulbound, I want to get this over with because I want to start releasing products. So, they've really got to bound this thing into some reasonable time frame. And I don't know what that is, but, can we say we want to get this done between 1 or 2 months and have a discussion about that?
I think Insight totally took the words out of my mouth on this one. Like, if we all went to do this in the same order, in a sane order based on IP, then, just kings alone picking, what is a reasonable time frame to give a king to pick? What is a reasonable time frame to give a duke to pick? Do we give a king a day? Each king gets a day? Well, I mean, there's 6 kings on a server? There's a week. And then now we get to dukes. Do dukes get 12 hours? I mean, there's how many dukes per kingdom?
Yeah, by the time you get to counts, you're taking years to do domain selection. We're going to have a full game by then.
Right.
So there's got to be an algorithm to getting this right.
But that breaks down to how do we want to do mechanics? Do we want to have it be so that, I should say we, but do they want to have it be so that as a duke or as a count, I pick my, say, top 10 counties. And then when my IP rolls down the list, the computer gives me my number one choice if it's available and works its way down? Or are we just going to have a free-for-all block of IP? Like, all right, anybody with 10,000 IP is going now. You have 12 hours. Anybody with 11,000 IP is going in the next 12 hours, kind of thing.
I think that I would do this by just giving people. I would figure out times on the clock, and I would just be like, I don't know. Let's just say it was 1 minute, and I would start with highest IP king and go down to lowest IP mare, and just give everyone 1 minute. You're on the clock for 1 minute starting this date, right? And then you get basically your 60 seconds. So if that's put out in enough time for you, so after map selection, you have however much time that is to figure out your time to be there. And then you can pick anywhere from when your time starts to when forever. But initially it gives you however how many minutes that is, 1 minute to whatever. It gives you that time where you're exclusive to your IP.
I mean, how many... Go ahead and say it.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, that's rough, right? Because then, so let's say I'm looking at one particular county and that county gets picked and then it's my turn. And it's all of a sudden like, oh, man. I think that would work in the beginning, right? Because statistically, if the one county you're looking at has gotten picked, there's probably a lot of other good counties for you. But as you get down in IP order, I think decisions will take longer to make, and they should.
Yeah.
So a very valid and Bob, a very valid argument here is I don't care. Like that's fine, right? They didn't pay enough, but it's a thought.
But you also have all of that time in between when the person above you has picked for you to start lining up. So, I mean, you should kind of have let's just talk about counts and mares. So if as a count, I'm going to have probably a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary pick just to make sure I'm covered, right? And then, my next mayors or whatever in my county should start having their primary, secondary, and tertiary pick as well, right? And then so by the time they actually get down there, they've looked at the map probably for many days.
Right. Right.
I think Bob hit a good point. I'm going to just shamelessly plug the Conclave. If you're not in a group that has gone through some kind of a mock land selection at least once, it's something you might want to broach to your group. Like, if you're in a duchy that just hasn't even begun discussing where your duchy wants to pick in your kingdom or your counts want to pick in your duchy, then that's a conversation that has to happen now before you get to land selection, because you're going to get to land selection and go, oh shit, what am I picking? And it's just going to turn into a free-for-all chaos.
Yeah, and I'll go a step further than that. I would say if you have not already had a mock land selection with a mocked up map with and taking it seriously with all the counts in your duchy or all the mayors in your county or whatever, you're probably already in a very bad spot. Like, I don't know if you can recover from that at this point.
And I think part of it too, though.
Right?
Go ahead, Utogi.
I was just saying, best to do it quickly, right? They don't have too much time left, so if you're going to actually try to make up for it, you'd better start basically now.
Yeah, immediately.
And most people have their established communities and stuff going. And I think that's the one thing that I would add to what you guys said to that, right? Is that it's not only in SBS's best interest to get the maps out as soon as possible, but I genuinely do feel, and I know SBSS does these recordings so people that are not in the community yet can hear them. I generally feel that their development team cares about the community base that they put here, and they realize that the map and domain selection is also the foundation to everything that everyone is doing here in their communities, right? So I think they generally want to get this out here so people can start building their lore, can start building their communities, can start saying, I actually do live here in this area, and I actually am going to focus on this, right? And I think they do generally care about the community that's in this game. I've yet to see a dev team that is so invested in the player base in any game, and I've alphaed many games. So, I mean, if you guys have, then bring it up. But I've never seen a team that's so engaged in the community than this dev team.
Yeah, no way. I mean, my experience comes from EVE Online, and there's no comparison. Sorry, CCP.
I mean, CCP loves their guys, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, before we go down that road, so I think, so Bob brought up an interesting point, right? Which was, how do we organize this? And Bob kind of said, well, 60 seconds on the clock. I think another way to do it might be, and we were talking about this earlier, so I'm not being very creative when I'm just stealing an idea here. Another way to do it might be you get people in bands of IP. So maybe there's the King Band, the Duke Band. Sorry, King Band, the Duke Band, and then 4 or 5 count bands.
Ban them all.
Yeah, right. Band hammers. And then say, okay, it is your band's turn to play. And then they go on stage and they rip some metal or whatever. Anyway, they pick, and then you just have a conflict resolution mechanic if 2 people in the same band pick the same county, and whether that's you pick the top 5, whether that's whatever. You kind of have the same effect as what Bob described on a similar order of magnitude in terms of time.
So
nothing. Okay.
No. So I want to reiterate for those who are listening or tuning in the future. What we've discussed really at this point is this idea of doing the land selection as mechanic on Soulbound side as a IP band method. You create an IP group, and that IP group goes, and then there's some conflict resolution. And I want to circle back on that. We've got, Blob was talking about a time method, based on IP, based on different factors. I'm not sure if it was IP solely based, Blob, there, that what you were thinking about, or...
Yeah. So I would say you start with, Adam's the highest king, right? You start with Adam Ryan, and you go, okay, you're number 1 on the clock. We're starting on blank date at noon, right? So from noon to noon 01, Adam Ryan is on the clock, right? And he gets 60 seconds of, and this would be, you've shown the maps now for months now. So everyone has had, months to look at the maps and everything, right? But, he's on from noon to noon 1, and then he goes. He has 60 seconds or whatever it is, 5 minutes. Pick a time. He has an exclusive time where he can pick his map, right? And then as soon as his time's up, the next person is on the clock for their exclusive time with Adam also on the clock if he hadn't checked. and then the next person, and the next person. So your clock starts, and you're on until you pick, but you get a certain amount of time where you're exclusive.
Gotcha.
And just disclaimering this, the people and places we're talking about here are Luna server, the North American East server.
Correct. That is definitely correct. So, and for lack of a better term, I'm gonna call that a time window, method. Was there another method that we had discussed? Insight, you had the bland, Blob, you had the time window method. Did we talk? Did we talk about something similar to? I know we were talking about before. This is my idea. It was a shameless plug. But ranked choice voting, kind of, almost like a combination of the time window method and the IP band voting method, such that a count, a duke, a king, a mayor, creates a rank of, say, 10 positions, locations that they're choosing, and then when that needs to be resolved, it's resolved through the IP hierarchy, at least to me, sounds like a...
And, I think whatever method you do, too, you're going to have a break, right? So, like, after the Monarchs pick, I think there's going to have to be a break of a day, like, so that everyone can see where the kingdom's all laid out at. And then when the Dukes pick, I think there's going to have to be a break of a day so the counts can all look and go, where did all the Dukes lay out at? And then, after, and I don't know if it's a day is the right time, but, like, whatever time, I think there's going to have to be a break in between each level of picking.
Yeah, I mean, what we're kind of setting ourselves up for here is a very engaged 1 to 2, however many months we're going to make land selection take, right? Because if you're say you're a count, you have to be extremely plugged into what's going on around you so you can make your pick in a timely manner. This is not going to be a situation where you have all the time in the world.
Well, I know that, like, we have a very diverse group and level system of influence, right? So we don't have 10 people who are sitting at 11,000 exactly. We have a gamut of people sitting anywhere from 1,000 to like 20,000, just pulling numbers here. So when we get into us as a duchy picking, I don't think we're going to have as big of an issue as a lot of people think when they go, oh my God, I'm going to pick in a bracket of 500 counts. Well, yeah, you might pick in a bracket of 500 counts or 50 counts or pick your X number of how many, but that's between everybody spread out between all of the duchies. So in your duchy, in your bracket, you might only have 2 counts picking. And I think that would be something that would be okay with the band system if that's the way we went.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't expect a lot of competition except for like super high value counties, right? Like, so counties that have big cities in them and things like that. But you would expect a lot of competition around those counties.
So let me throw out an interesting implication that no one's touched on yet. The fact that land selection is in and of itself a resource. So when we get down to domain selection and things are really to the wire, I think it bears mentioning at least that people will start talking to each other a lot more about their particular thoughts and wants out of a given domain. And we could very well see people forging or breaking alliances over territory at this point. And I think that's a really interesting part of domain selection, in that if you don't get what you want, how willing are you to work with other people to reach some kind of compromise? Or maybe say, well, I'm okay with you having this as long as we can share some kind of resource.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Insight.
And Wes, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? I mean, if you are not part of a community that has already started doing these mock land selections and already started having these discussions, yeah, you might find yourself in that situation. Because the Conclave started doing this months and months ago, and we have a really good idea of what everyone wants, and even as we've changed, we've made notes of that. That's just such not an issue here. But what it might mean is that we pick up people from other duchies who realize that, oh, crap, I don't actually have room. I don't have a place to be in this duchy. That's a big deal.
We are absolutely, there's absolutely going to be swap ups here from communities, right? And the reason being is because, I mean, take a few tribes, right? So take Broodveer. How many kingdoms is Broodveer in? Predominantly 1 kingdom. So
right.
There's people that are just waiting around, and that's that is the most popular tribe, I think, in the game right now, based on the voting, the surveys they've had all over the forums and stuff, right? So there's going to be people that are waiting around for Broodveer, clearly, right? Take another tribe. Look at Kipik, right? So there is 5% of the game that wants to play Kipik based on the surveys they did on the forums, right? And there's not a single leader in this game, duchy or kingdom, that I know of that's like, I can't wait to be Kipik, right? So
Right.
whoever gets
Right.
Kipik, right, they're going to get 5% of the player base here right now.
Well, I mean, probably, right? Unless tribe is less exciting to people than the community they're with or than other things. So who knows?
Yeah, I think the point that I was really trying to make here is that the domain selection is where we are going to see the biggest impact on the narrative among kingdoms, duchies, and counties before the game even starts. Like, this is where it begins. This is where the rivalries start to crop up, where the alliances start to get forged, where we see people's true colors start to fly. So I personally am really looking forward to it, even though I have no intention whatsoever of participating ever, because domain running management is not really my kind of thing.
Well,
It'll be interesting. Go ahead and say.
Go ahead, Balrog.
It'll be interesting to see how many people, once we get a map, though, kind of change what they want. So, are we going to see people that start out saying, "Man, I really want to pick Kipik, but being Kipik, I want to pick in the heart of the trees," and then it comes time for selection, and they go, "Oh man, we're just going to wild card this one and go. We're going to pick on the coast. We're still going to get Kipik, but now we're on the coast, and that kind of screws things up." So I think we're going to see definitely a lot of wild carding going on, especially as we get more and more map information where maybe the heart of the trees isn't as viable as, say, being on the border or vice versa. And that's really what's going to be the fun in selection.
I would bet my paycheck right now this month that the two most important factors to like 90% of this game is biome and tribe, right? And look at even people. Look at Jedzia, for example, right? Jedzia has been with the Conclave forever. She's like a staple here, right? And before they put out that you could be any tribe in the game, Jedzia was like, "I'm gonna be wherever Teresk is." Like, so, and if that means I gotta leave, then I'm sorry. I love you all, but I've got to leave, right? And that's a staple community member here that was going to leave because of tribe. So I think that like this is going to be, it's understated how much the biome and the tribe is going to impact things when we get to domain selection and where people are going. It's going to have major shift ups in people, I think.
So with that in mind, and I like the mirroring of choreographed, chaotic, structured, crazy, dystopian, utopian kind of ideas. So I kind of want to end on this idea. What we've come to a conclusion. If you've been listening, what we've discussed is map voting through land selection. What's that going to look like? What does that mean for the different communities, the different player bases? And I think everybody can agree. If you're looking for a last thing to take away from this video, is it's going to be exciting. Whether it's choreographed, whether it's chaotic, whether it's ends in a utopia or a dystopia, at the end of the day, we're all excited for that. We're all excited to tell that story, to see where that goes, and we hope you are too. So this has been Face the Conclave. We've got Balrog, Insight, Black Bob, Wes, and Utogi here. Hopefully you recognize their voices if you chime into our Conclave Discord channel or pop your head into the Vornair Discord. Give us a shout. We're always willing to talk. We're always looking forward to having more participation, more people excited about this game. I hope you've recognized that we all are. We're all school children waiting to open up the presents on Christmas morning. And so log in, get involved. If you're part of a different community, and you're seeing and listening to what we're talking about, and it's driven some conversations at home, great. That's what we're looking for. That's what we serve to do. We want this game, the Chronicles of Elyria, to be successful, to be exciting, to get everything that we want out of it. And we're trying to do our part. So, if you want to tune in, we try to hold Face the Conclave videos Sundays at 4. There will be 1-2 videos, I believe, tomorrow. So if you're looking for more information, if you're looking to meet more of the community, if you're looking to listen to more of these conversations, let us know. Send us messages, join our Discord. But But we're gonna take off now. Everybody.
And Aspis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're planning some at least Luna side election day coverage.
Yeah, we're gonna have a few videos come out. I'm working with a group to do some commentary on mock land selection. Working with some groups to do more of the similar type videos that you've seen today. But we want to keep you in the loop. We wanna be engaged and be engaging. So, all right, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. See you later, folks. Bye bye.